today we have yet again been given the honor to be led by the Honorable Huffaz in Taraweeh. And today they covered 2/3 of the Taraweeh was covering Surah Al-A'raf. So inshallah we'll talk a bit about Surah Al-A'raf. Maulana Imad yesterday he covered and spoke about Surah Al-A'raf and gave a very insightful presentation of the surah. So if you missed yesterday, you can catch up on YouTube. The video is there, inshallah. So Surah Al-A'raf is a surah that deals with mentioning the struggle between Iman and Kufr. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He details the struggle between truth and falsehood. And how does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala present this struggle between Iman and Kufr, the struggle between truth and falsehood? Allah does so through the stories of the prophets. He mentions various prophets, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and how these prophets gave da'wah to their people, and also the response they received from their people. The surah begins with, in fact, the creation of Adam alayhi salam. And the first enemy of the Muslims, the first enemy of Islam, and the first enemy of Iman is presented in that story. And that is the struggle Adam alayhi salam had with Shaitan. The struggle Adam alayhi salam had with Iblis. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right off the bat in the surah, He tells us who our main enemy is. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّ الشَّيْطَانَ لَكُمْ عَدُوٌ مُبِينٌ. That Shaitan is a clear enemy of yours. So a smart Muslim will be aware of this and try his best to save himself from the influences of Shaitan. But if Shaitan is a hidden enemy, right, it doesn't show himself to you. He influences you through subtle means. He gives you thoughts that are evil. He gives you thoughts and inspirations to disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Shaitan is a hidden enemy. But if Shaitan is our hidden enemy, the enemy that we struggle with at home, the enemy that we struggle with in our private life, who is the enemy that attacks us in our public life? And this Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually tells us. He spells out who this enemy is. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He begins with, after talking about Adam alayhi salam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He begins with the story of Nuh alayhi salam. Nuh alayhi salam, the first Rasul sent to this ummah. First Rasul meaning he was the first one who had the duty to invite his people towards Islam. Right? It was at the time of Nuh alayhi salam that idol worship, meaning when Nuh alayhi salam came, idol worshipping was ripe. And it was Nuh alayhi salam's duty to invite the people back to Tawheed, back to monotheism, back to accepting the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah in this story and in the subsequent stories, there are a total of 7 stories, including that of Adam alayhi salam, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala portrays in the surah. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions a group that is recurring throughout the time, that is recurring throughout ages. This group Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala calls Al-Mala'. Mim, Lam, Hamza, Mala'. Now what is this group Al-Mala' that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala refers to? This group is portrayed as the elite of society. In fact, Tahir ibn Ashur, the author of the very masterful work, At-Tahrir wa Tanwir, a Tafsir of the Qur'an, he explains what the word mala' means. He says this is a group who are the elite of society, and they come together and they conspire among each other to dictate what happens in society, to decide what happens in society. And in fact, this is not a group that, in fact, this is a psychology, right? The mala', yes, it's a real group, but this is a recurring psychology that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks truth of throughout the ages. That there will always be in society a al-mala'. So just like in the time of Nuh alayhi salam there was al-mala', we can be sure that there is al-mala' today. So what was this interaction Nuh alayhi salam had with his people, and how does this group al-mala' play into this? Nuh alayhi salam, he invited his people for 950 years. Nuh alayhi salam invited his people towards Islam during the day. Nuh alayhi salam invited his people towards Islam during the night. Nuh alayhi salam invited his people to Islam in public. Nuh alayhi salam invited his people to Islam in private. Nuh alayhi salam for 950 years, day and night, publicly and privately, he called towards Islam. And at the end of it, what did he have to show for it? Scholars differ as to how many people accepted Islam, but the common view is that around 40 people accepted Islam after 950 years. This al-mala' within the society, they without a doubt had a role in preventing the spread of Islam. Because one of the things that this group al-mala' do is they spread propaganda, right? They propagandize against Islam. And this again is a recurring theme throughout history. So what are some ways that this group al-mala', the elite of society, how do they propagandize against Islam? In the story of Nuh alayhi salam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us an example of their propaganda. And this is encapsulated in the verse أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم إنا لنراك في ضلال مبين. Certainly, O Nuh, we see you in clear error, clear misguidance. See, the kuffar, those who do not have iman within their heart, they view the world only from a materialistic lens. Everything is explained by cause and effect. Everything is explained by material things. Atoms bashing against each other, this happens. Everything is explained through what? The observable universe. So when Nuh alayhi salam invited them towards Islam, when Nuh alayhi salam told them that one day you're going to die and you're going to be resurrected, they said that this doesn't even fit their worldview. Resurrection? What's resurrection? Once we die, once we become decomposed bones, once we become dirt, that's it, finished, end of the story. So when Nuh alayhi salam invited them towards this new way of thinking, a thinking that's outside of pure materialism, he invited them towards considering an existence outside of the physical, considering an existence beyond what we see, considering the idea of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, a being who created you, a being who controls everything, but you cannot see him. They said, this is just pure falsehood, this is dalal. In other words, Nuh alayhi salam is purely wrong. So this is one way in which al-mala', they spread propaganda against Islam. Right? And we see that today. Whenever governments, they make policy, religion and God is not even in the picture. Right? It's just, okay, we want to invade X country here. How invading this country, what resources does it provide us? What ideologies does it prevent that prevents us from controlling resources and people and our influence or power? The next story, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He discusses is the story of Hud alayhi salam. Hud alayhi salam was sent to the people of Ad. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says about the people of Ad, they are ذات العماد. ذات العماد, people of pillars. What does that mean, people of pillars? Scholars have mentioned various things. Some scholars say Imad, people of pillars, because of their length, how tall they were. They were giants. Right? Another opinion is that Dhatul Imad, meaning they were very, very, very strong. Yeah, like pillars, they were extremely strong. And in fact, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that when the people of Aad, they attack other civilizations, they absolutely destroy them. Absolutely wipe them out. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says about the people of Aad, ذات العماد التي لم يخلق مثلها في البلاد, that they were a people who no other people were settled on the earth before them. They had a civilization in history from the beginning of time until future times, until the end of time basically. They had a civilization, and they will have a civilization far superior than any civilization that will ever exist in history. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, التي لم يخلق مثلها في البلاد, a civilization that nothing is like it. This was the people of Aad. They were giants, they were extremely strong, they were extremely wealthy. Whenever they would attack anybody, it's finished, game over. What happened to these people? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala destroyed them with tornadoes that bashed them for 7 nights and 8 days, and they were absolutely wiped out, so much so that no trace of them remains today. Talking about, again, al-mala, the mala of this society, the society of Hud alayhi salam. What propaganda did they spread? What kind of propaganda did they spread? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says that the people of Hud, the mala of Hud, they said, إِنَّا لَنَرَاكَ فِي سَفَاهَةٍ وَإِنَّا لَنَظُنُّكَ مِنَ الْكَاذِبِينَ. That, O Hud, we see you as foolish. We see you as stupid. And certainly you're just a liar. In other words, this is a tactic of discrediting the individual. In today's society, when the people in charge, when the media, and we know that the media is rigged, if you're a Muslim, and you're unaware that the media is rigged, where you've been under a rock or something, yeah? Just for example, the case of Palestine and Israel. What's the possibility is that you have 100 media channels and all of them are saying the exact same thing. Come on, there has to be something behind this, and we know this. An individual named Rupert Murdoch, he owns a bunch of media companies in the UK, in Australia, and I think in US as well. And he decides very much, him and his cronies, they decide what goes on. But anyways, the mala they spread, they discredit the individual. In today's age, this might be something like calling somebody an extremist, calling somebody a radical, calling somebody anti-Semite. Yeah. Once the masses, when they hear these labels, that's it. They're just like, anything he says, he's an anti-Semite. Anything he says, well, he's a radical. You might be speaking truth, but as far as the masses know, they have this lens of they've dismissed you. Yeah, anything you say after that is finished, right? So this is another way that the al-mala, a trick that they use. They discredit you by labeling you with certain names. Allah talks about the people of Salih alayhi salam, who were sent to the people of Thamud, and these people, they were destroyed. These people were amazing architects, right? So much so that within rocks, they were able to build amazing architecture. Yeah, go on Google and type in Mada'in Salih. Mada'in Salih, you'll see the remains of their empire in Saudi Arabia, right? And you'll see how intricate and detailed their architecture was. So they were advanced society with advanced technology that maybe even us, we don't have today, right? Don't think that technology within society is a linear progression, meaning people started with sticks and stones and then until today we've been going up and up and up and up. No. Yeah? Just like with anything, things are cyclical. Yeah? We have ups and downs, ups and downs, ups and downs in society. So the people of Salih alayhi salam, they were a very advanced nation that were able to carve these amazing architecture, and they were destroyed. How? by a screech, a sound wave a sound wave that absolutely destroyed them. What propaganda did Al-Mala in the society of Salih spread? They took a different approach. Salih alayhi salam, he had street cred. He had cred he had a rep within his society, so it wasn't easy to discredit him. So they went around and they approached the followers of Salih alayhi salam. And what did they say to the followers of Salih alayhi salam? They said words that would create doubts within them. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, قال الملأ الذين استكبروا من قومه للذين استضعفوا لمن آمن منهم أتعلمون أن صالحا مرسلا من ربه. They said to the people of Salih, the followers of Salih as-salam, and they were being sarcastic when they're saying this, or rather they were saying this from a position of trying to create doubt within the followers. They said, have you heard that Salih alayhi salam, or that Salih is a messenger from his Lord? In other words, what's this crazy talk he's trying to talk? They're trying to create doubt within the followers. That's another tactic Al-Mala use. Allah also talks about the people of Lut alayhi salam. I think everyone here knows these individuals. So the Mala in this society, they apply the tactic of mocking the followers and the leader and those who call towards truth. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says regarding them, وَمَا كَانَ جَوَابَ قَوْمِهِ إِلَّا أَنْ قَالُوا أَخْرِجُوهُمْ مِنْ قَرْيَتِكُمْ إِنَّهُمْ أُنَاسٌ يَتَطَهَّرُونَ. So the people of Lut, the Mala of the time of Lut, they said that Lut and his people, they are a people who have purified themselves. In other words, they're being sarcastic when they were saying this. Right? And we know how, the people who push filthy ideologies, they have this label that, unfortunately, as a Muslim is an honorable label. But the kuffar, they twist things around. The degenerates, they twist things around and they make it into a derogatory term, an insult. They call you a prude. Do you know what a prude is? Prude is somebody who, he doesn't like talking about obscene things. He stays away from obscene things. If you're labeled a prude, you're labeled a weirdo. So likewise, the people of Salih, they said, these are people who يَتَطَهَّرُونَ, they're too pure, these individuals. And they meant it as a mock. Another way that the people would attack and propagandize against the Muslims is through threats of death to the Prophet and the people. For example, the people of Shu'aib alayhi salam, his people, they said, لَنُخْرِجَنَّكَ يَا شُعَيْبُ وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا مَعَكَ مِنْ قَرْيَتِنَا أَوْ لَتَعُودُنَّ فِي مِلَّتِنَا قَالَ أَوَلَوْ كُنَّا كَارِهِينَ. They threatened Shu'aib alayhi salam with exiling him and getting him out of, and kicking him out of the society. And in those days, if you're outcasted from a society, survival is very difficult. Being exiled from your home is as good as being put to death. And finally, just to wrap it up, Musa alayhi salam and Fir'aun. Right? It's interesting how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala begins, the first story he mentions is that of Adam and Shaitan. Shaitan, the worst of the hidden enemies. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ends the stories with Fir'aun, the worst of the human enemies to Islam. And how did Fir'aun discredit Musa alayhi salam? Or how did Musa create propaganda against Musa alayhi salam? Well, he done the old trick of discrediting him and claiming that he's part of a conspiracy. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, قَالَ الْمَلَأ, the Mala said, this elite group, from the people of Fir'aun, they said, إِنَّ هَذَا لَسَاحِرٌ عَلِيمٌ. Certainly, Musa alayhi salam, he is a knowledgeable magician. In other words, this miracle that he's performing, he's throwing the staff, and the staff is turning into a snake with the will of Allah. They're saying this is magic. They're discrediting him. Musa alayhi salam saying, I'm a prophet performing miracles from my Lord. The Mala are saying, no, this is not. Don't believe him, O masses. This individual is just a magician. They also said, قال فرعون آمنتم به قبل أن آذن لكم إن هذا لمكر مكرتموه. That when the magicians that challenged Musa alayhi salam, if you don't know the story, you should read up upon it. But when the magicians, they challenged Musa alayhi salam and they realized that Musa alayhi salam is performing miracles, they accepted Islam. And Fir'aun, he twisted it around and he said, these people, these magicians that I hired, by the way, that Fir'aun hired, they actually are part of a conspiracy that they made with Musa alayhi salam behind closed doors to trick the society into becoming Muslim. Yeah, this is a conspiracy. But the reality is, as we looked at from Tahir ibn Ashur's explanation of the word Mala, the Mala, they are people of conspiracy. They are a hidden enemy. They are an enemy who conspire at night against Islam, against high ideals, against truth, and they lead the masses astray. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us aware of this. Just to end, it's important to know that how does a society, how should we, because these Mala, they're afraid of Islam because it's a threat to their way of life. It's a threat to the riches that they live in, the luxuries that they live in, or they perceive it that way. But the reality is that Islam brings about riches. Right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that وَلَوْ أَنَّ أَهْلَ الْقُرَىٰ آمَنُوا وَاتَّقَوْا لَفَتَحْنَا عَلَيْهِمْ بَرَكَاتٍ مِّنَ السَّمَاءِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَلَكِنْ كَذَّبُوا فَأَخَذْنَاهُمْ بِمَا كَانُوا يَكْسِبُونَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, had the people of the towns, in other words, had these nations, the nation of Nuh, the nation of Hud, the nation of Salih, etc., had they believed and had taqwa, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would have opened up the floodgates of barakah for them from the heavens and the earth. However, they denied. And what happened? What was the result? Destruction. So we learn from this, and to end, the way towards affluence, the way towards riches, the way towards luxury is Iman wa taqwa. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin.